Okay, this is something that really bothers me, so I have to talk about it. It seems that the state of Florida has been warehousing children with disabilities in nursing homes. And the federal government is investigating this. And what it says here in the article is investigators identified numerous children who didn't need to be there and who would benefit from moving home with their families or other community settings. So, and then it says, they are unnecessarily separated from their families and communities for years, including some who enter facilities as infants or toddlers and have spent a decade or longer institutionalized. Florida, this letter states, administers a system providing unnecessary segregation and isolation of children, often for many years in nursing home facilities. And federal officials concluded the state has made it difficult for children to get medical services that would allow them to move back home. This really upsets me. Apparently, from this article that I will link and from some others that I've read, the kids are basically just abandoned. They don't get the stimulation that children need. They don't get out. They don't get to play with other kids. I don't know if it's this article in the other one, I'd have to check, but in one place it was like the kids were segregated on the second floor all by themselves. And this just infuriates me because we all know that children need interaction. They need to be able to play. They need stimulation. I don't care how disabled they are. I've mentioned, I think before, that I, have done some volunteer work with the mentally disabled, developmentally disabled specifically. And I can remember this woman who, well, you almost really would have to call her a child. I'm not sure if she was in her 30s or 40s, but she had the mind of an infant. But her foster mom, who essentially raised her, would still take her out to places with the other kids and, to other events where there were developmentally disabled kids and even to other things. And you could see that she benefited from this. She was like a baby, but babies need stimulation. I mean, all you have to do is just, you don't even have to read the articles, but if you go to news sites and things, they're always talking about how babies need stimulation, how you should have, colors and the sounds and movement and talk to children and things like that. And so it doesn't make any difference if you've got an adult with the mind of a baby. That adult still benefits from the same things that a baby would, from toys, from colors, from sounds, from people talking to them. And this woman, I remember, could be very happy for hours playing with a piece of string. But she liked being out, all the sounds and things, and she could walk. She couldn't speak, of course, or anything. And I contrasted this with when I first got involved. I was in high school, and I mentioned I went to a Catholic high school. Well, when the senior year in our high school, the seniors would sometimes volunteer at a state mental hospital. And ostensibly we were supposed to be teaching religion, but that was a joke and everybody knew it. Because what we were really doing was we were giving some human interaction to these kids that were essentially warehoused in state mental hospitals. This is one of the reasons this really appalls me, because I saw what it was like for kids in the state mental hospitals, and it wasn't good. Many of the workers there just really seemed indifferent to them. Now, I'm not saying they were bad people, but it could be that the system just had them, totally jaded, and they couldn't change anything. But I'll never forget, one week we had these kids, and they were twins, twin boys, identical twins, and they got sick and they threw up on themselves. The next week, when we came in, they were wearing the same shirts with the vomit on it. These kids got the best care, I think, just from what we saw, from the young men who were there doing alternative service. These were guys this was during the Vietnam War, and these were guys who were conscientious objectors. They wouldn't serve in the army. They wouldn't fight or kill anyone. So they did alternative service. And so we had some young men there doing alternative service, and they really cared about the kids. They also showed us what was really going on, including one day taking us through like the ward where we weren't supposed to be. And in another case, this one young man showed us what it was like for the very severely mentally disabled. And this was just shocking because there were adults in cribs basically just left there. Nobody, I mean, they didn't even have, when you see a baby in a crib, right? They have those cool little dangly things over them, mobiles and things like that, and, toys to play with, stuffed animals. These adults who had the minds of babies had none of this. And they were in a stark ward. Everybody who has babies paints the room with all kinds of little, bunnies and kitties and all sorts of colors and things to enhance the lives of the babies. But these adults it was tragic. I couldn't imagine how anyone could treat someone like that. And I remember my friends and I talking about this because this is a Catholic school. So although I'm an only child, most of my friends came from pretty good sized families. So they all had kids in their families, and many of them, younger children. As a matter of fact, I don't think I knew anyone who was actually a younger child. Most of them were in the older group. So they had babies around, their entire lives. And they knew how appalling this was. This is the way you treat people? And now we find the state of Florida just warehousing these kids again. And I've seen what that was like. To not give children the stimulation and not take them out, I don't care how mentally disabled they are. I've seen how someone who is, I said, had the mind of a baby, benefited from being out and about, benefited from the action, benefited from people talking to her, benefited from, just something to do other than stay at home and do nothing. And it doesn't say this here, but I even wonder if these kids ever get to watch TV or anything. Do they do? It's a terrible thing, honestly, to sit a child in front of a television and just leave them there. But at least that's some benefit. I've seen little kids just overjoyed with, like Sesame Street and things like that. They get really excited and jump up and down. It's some sort of stimulation. It doesn't say anything in this article about whether they even get to watch TV or anything. But I just really upset by this, and I'm really, 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 really glad that the Department of Justice is investigating this. And the other thing too is it says here that for these facilities, Florida pays more than $500 per day per child, more than double what the facilities receive from the state for the elderly residents. So you can see this is an advantage for the facilities. And yet, this money would be better spent having the kids at home and having giving the family some assistance in caring for the kids at home. And apparently, a lot of the parents want this, but Florida's system makes it extremely difficult. And one of the guys, again, I don't remember if it's this. I'm looking at this one article in CBS news site, but the one Florida state official tried to say, "Oh, well, we try to find the very best placement, and we do this in consultation with the parents." Well, what they basically mean by that is, well, we're not going to send them home with the parents because our system isn't set up to allow the parents to get any support in any way whatsoever. So the next best thing is to warehouse the kids. So I just found this terribly upsetting to find that. My senior year in high school was 1967 to 68. This is 2012. The thought that kids are being warehoused, anybody is being warehoused again, and believe me, as someone who is 62, I'm not real thrilled with some of the things I've seen in some of these senior facilities. And some of that's warehousing too. But children? And in senior facilities where they really aren't equipped to handle them? Well, I just find it so upsetting that here it is in 2012 that even though all the reports I've ever read, and I don't have any references for you right now, I'm sorry, but I have, this is something that's been of interest to me for years, so I've read a lot, shows that people are better at home when you give them some support. And I've actually worked, I sort of fell into it accidentally because I used to babysit for some group homes that had developmentally disabled kids. And part of the reason I fell into that is because they couldn't find people who would babysit for them, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world to me, because I was babysitting for young adults who were easy to take care of. I mean, they could take care of themselves. People just have this really weird idea that people who are developmentally disabled are somehow incapable of doing anything. I didn't have to do a whole lot, you know. I mean, I would like cook for them, and most of the time they were fine to take care of themselves. One group home was younger kids, but they were also fine too. Plus, it was a excuse me, a large group, and they all knew how to take care of each other, you know. But see, I was actually paid from the state. Excuse me, boy, sorry. Because we have a policy here that allows people who take care, who have these group homes, or people who take care of their family members at home, and I did that too, where they allow them, I don't remember what the law is, but they get, you know, you can have somebody come in and look after their loved one for a while so they can get a night out, or so they can go on a week's vacation. And this is one hell of a lot cheaper than institutionalizing someone. To say nothing of it's better for the families, it's better for the individual, the child or adult that needs care, and it's also better for the communities, because people, when people are isolated, when they're kept away, that's when people think they're really, really weird. One of my friends who had a group home, actually, and these were developmentally disabled adults, she actually had to get in her car and drive to where the nearest school was. Sorry. And measure the distance, because there was still an old law in the books that you couldn't have a developmentally disabled adults within a certain distance from the school. That's since been done away with, I think. But that, I mean, the prejudice exists because you isolate people. You don't have them part of the community. In some countries, it's much, much worse. People with physical disability are stared at, and people keep them hidden away because there's something wrong. Anyway, I'm done now, but this totally pissed me off, so I had to talk about it. Thanks. Bye.